Hey everybody, it's Brad Yates with you again for another episode of Get Ready. And today with me is an author that I was introduced to by my wife. My wife has taken a writing course and found this woman fascinating, thought she had a lot to offer, and in fact had a new book out. And so with me today is Jan Fishler, and talking about her book, Don't Stop Now, Making the Most of the Rest of Your Life. So thank you, Jan, for being with me.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm
I'm
really
happy to have you here. So let me give folks a quick little bit of a bio on you. So Jan began her writing career and producing informational and motivational videos. In addition to developing more than 100 corporate scripts, she produced the Path to Publication DVD series, filmed at the Community of Writers Conference at Squaw Valley. The series contains advice from authors that include Amy Tan, Anne Lamott, Janet Fitch, and Mark Childress. In 2010, she published an adoption memoir, Searching for Jane, Finding Myself. She has written for Viet Now, National Magazine, and the Union newspaper. She has a BS in English Literature from Ohio University and an MA in Educational Technology from California State University, San Francisco. Impressive credentials.
okay.
And and now you have this new book with your writing partner, El Gianforte.
Yeah.
So, So I'm just going to start with a question from one of the things that I read in the book, and I want to know, Jan, what do you have against having a short stack of blueberry pancakes at 5:30 p.m.?
I have nothing against that. If it works for you, that's fine. I think you're probably talking about some information you read in our first chapter, which was about physical well-being. And, the point of our whole book is really to just provide a bunch of options. Over probably 6 months, we interviewed formally and very informally a lot of women about their life and where they're at, where they want to go, what work still needed to be done. And we realized that so many women who are 50 are in a transition. Their kids maybe have gone to college, they didn't come back home, or they did come back home and they shouldn't have, or a career has ended, or someone wants a career to end, or a husband is sick, or they get a divorce later. And we just discovered that so many of us, including ourselves, were going through these life's transitions. And we thought, where's the book? Like, we were looking for the information, like, who can we go to? So that's how it happened. And blueberry pancakes at 4, it's fine, especially if you're on a cruise.
Right. Exactly.
They'll deliver.
It's the food that'll get you on the cruise.
Yeah.
And I kid with you because I enjoyed that reference to it, because there is that sense of, at a certain age, we are relegated to the Blue Plate special and early dinners, and well, this is what it is for for the rest of our lives. And so I love that you guys have put this book together for, hey, the rest of your life can be the best of your life, and so many different options. So now part of it is just you and El from your own experience and what you guys have gone through and what you were doing. And then you have a lot of interviews with both experts and with other women going through the same thing.
Right. Yeah. We, it's funny. I live in a very small town, and Elle lives around the corner from me. And the two of us met walking dogs probably 15 years ago. And she had an idea for a book called Aging Without a Roadmap. And so we were talking about this, and her vision was, some of them are the interviews in the beginning. We have some women who have done some amazing things later in life. And that was going to be her book. And I said, but what about us just normal people? I had just worked at hospice of the foothills here, and I was doing publicity for them. And one of the people I interviewed during that process was the clergyman. And I said, what do people talk about at the end of life? Why do they pull you in then? It seems like they should have been thinking about this earlier, just as an idea. And he said, at the end of life, people want to know that that life has had value and meaning. That what they've done has been significant. And I went, boy, I do not want to be at that point and then worrying about it. And I recall when my dad was sick and he passed away shortly afterwards, he said, I have one big regret, and that's not spending enough time with you and the grandkids. And I said, gosh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. They never mentioned it or anything. So for me, this book was really taking an assessment of how far I've come and determining what's worked and what the areas were that I still need work for me, and what would the vision of my best life be. So that at the end, my kids will have no trouble writing my obituary. They can go, yeah, or I don't know.
So in many ways, it's a guidebook on how to not have regrets at the end of your life.
I think so. I mean, that's one way to look at it. Because we looked, it started, I saw a graph that it's a circle, and it was all about, I think it was for high school kids to look at different aspects of their life and plan for the future. But nowhere was there a way to use a similar kind of graph and say, oh, I did a pretty good job. Or, gee, I've done great in some of these areas. A lot of women will say, oh, well, financially, I'm set. I'm married to a really great guy. We have the house. I'm all in good shape. But physically, they might be falling apart, and be overweight and not eating well and things like that. Or someone might say, yeah, my kids and I don't get along. So that's an area that needs some work. Or other relationships might be great for them, but they don't know what to do with their time. They've run out. The flip side of that could be somebody who is living on Social Security. And I have a great story about this. I put a group of women together. We all went to Africa.
Wow.
And this started because a friend of mine, she's an older lady at the gym who I worked out with all the time, said, boy, on my bucket list, I really want to go to Africa. And she was an environmentalist, and she had a nonprofit in our town about deep ecology, which was a mystery word and no one really understood it. And she brought speakers in from all over the world and basically didn't really make any money. So when she closed the nonprofit, she decided she'd have to clean houses to make ends meet. Mind you, she has a degree in psychology and had been a hypnotherapist in her former life. So we're coming back on the plane, and she happens to be talking to some people. We were sitting in a long row, and these were young men who had grown up in the townships where there's such poverty. And they said, but we had 100 mothers. Like, you couldn't go anywhere without somebody checking in on you. And all their goal was, I want to go to college. They all wanted to go to college. They wanted to come to America to study here. And so we got done with that conversation. And later I said to my friend, and you're cleaning houses? I said, you have a degree in psychology. What are you doing? So she, when we got back, she said, I think I'm going to reinstate my license. And now she's doing hypnotherapy again. And she's really good at it and helping lots of people.
Excellent.
To me, that's sort of a really great story about, she's 78 years old and she's pretty much relaunched a career. I just love that about people. If we don't look at age as a number and we don't get all caught up in, I'm too old for this or I'm too this for this. And we just say, I want to do it. And she's so good at what she does. It's fabulous. So.
Yeah, that idea that it's never too late to create the life that you want. I so often have had people tell me that, well, I'm this age and I'm this age, and I'll bring up people like Grandma Moses, who started painting in her late 70s. And so there's all kinds of great stories of that. And as you said earlier, there are those amazing stories of those individuals, and then there's so many other simpler stories, so that it's not like we can put those people up on a pedestal and say, well, that's them, it's not going to happen for me, but it really is possible for anybody.
Well, and so much of it is attitude. Like, we have a whole chapter on behaviors, and there's so many things that we do that sabotage the quality of our life. It's just our thinking. We're not even leaving our house. We're sabotaging things. And, that fear and victim mentality and just negative talk, self-talk. We all know that person. We might love them. They might be a family member, but you're like, oh my God, can they say anything that's positive? Could they? I don't know. It's just so hard you want to shake them,
Yeah.
Stop, stop it. So I hope that some of those people see themselves in the book and go, oh, just rethink some of the possibilities, that you don't have to be a naysayer, and that you can be supportive of other people, and you don't have to be in competition, and that there's an abundance on the planet, and pretty much anything we want, we just have to be open and receptive and put it out there. If there's something you need or want, I mean, look at where we live. It's out there, and you probably are one or two people away from getting it. So it's not that difficult.
So it's really about changing our minds about what's possible for us.
I think so. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think is, or what have you found in the research that you guys did for this book and in the interviews? What do you think is the biggest block that you guys came up against, or that found the attitude that was most often getting in the way of people?
I think a lot of people have been so programmed from childhood without ever, unless they've had some therapy and gone through some self-exploration. I think they believe whatever they were told, that they can only go this far. That, well, I grew up here and I learned this, and this is my degree, and this is who I married, and I can't go beyond this. So I think we have a lot of preconceived notions. I can't pick any one attitude or behavior because it's different. I mean, we have so many different examples in the book.
Mm-hmm.
A really nice one. There's a woman who, I think 10 years ago, her husband was diagnosed with chondrosarcoma, which is a horrible cancer. And he had his femur removed and replaced with something that looked like a wrench. It was horrible. And he never complained at all. And his prognosis was not good. He really far outlived what the expectation was. And they had enough means. And he said to her, where do you want to go? Let's travel. Let's do whatever you want, because my end is closer than further out. And what can we do together to make the last years really great? And so they went on all kinds of trips. They hosted all kinds of events and parties. He got her set up in a really nice house so that she didn't have a lot to deal with. They put all their affairs in order. And I think in that case, that's such a good example of realism. He accepted it, and he was very graceful about it and talked about it, so nobody felt uncomfortable. He didn't say, oh, we can't mention it, the C word. Right. I think that there's a certain grace that people can learn, even if we weren't raised with it.
Yeah. So of the experts that you interviewed, what was the perhaps the most surprising, or the most I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but of the experts that you interviewed, that you found, wow, that is really something that'll make a huge difference? Was there someone who...
There was, we interviewed a woman who's a psychologist, and she's from India, and her name's Anita, and written a book. It was, her master's thesis was about the adults who come to the United States to be with their Indian children who have moved away from India. Mm. And they come to this country later in life, and they don't know the language that well. They don't know the customs. They're living with their kids. They're in isolation. And I started thinking about that, like how hard that would be to be a certain age and change countries and be dependent on your kids, who essentially you're moving in to be the babysitter and the cook, and how isolating that would feel. And I thought, wow, that would just be horrible. So she has a whole practice seeing these people and trying to get them to find one another in this country. Like, their own expat community.
Wow.
And I found that I never thought about that, that, gee, I'm going to go live in Czechoslovakia, for instance, and not know anyone there. And, oh, gee, live with my kids and take care of their kids. I don't know. That just would not be my first choice. And yet the sense of family is so different there that they feel it's their duty in many ways, but they're not really happy because they've lost so much. They've lost their community.
Mm.
So I think it made me realize how important community is and how nice it is to find your peeps, whoever they are, wherever they may be.
And they're out there somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah. Well, and that's where giving back is so important, to find a place and most of the women, I'll tell you what a lot of them complained about, it was their husbands who had retired and they did not know what to do with themselves. And you can't play golf every day and you can watch sports pretty much every day, but they were home and suddenly they wanted to manage the house. Now, here's a woman who's been doing that for a long time, and now the husband wants to do all the decorating and they don't know how to even communicate with them. It's like, honey, get a life.
Yeah.
Their husbands are just at a loss too. And so this is where I think all the clubs, Kiwanis, Elks, all the animal clubs that people can join, men can join when they're retired, women too. But I think you have to find a place to put that energy and all that intellectual stimulation that you're used to from the work environment into something that is productive and fun. And, I have a friend, he retired, and I said, what are you doing? Because I don't know his wife very well, and so she wasn't one of the people who was complaining. And he said, oh no, I work at the Restore. It's Habitat for Humanity. And I said, what do you do there? He said, stuff I've never done. I place all the tools, I price things. He said, I love going there. So he found a volunteer niche that sort of filled him up with, and before he had a desk job. So, it's an opportunity as we get older to maybe try out some things that we always thought, well, maybe when I'm retired, and then you are, and it's like, okay.
So part of the book is how to manage the husband and get him out of the house?
Not really, but it should have been. I think we could add an addendum. No, it's not really about managing people, but it is having conversations. I think communication, we do suggest that. Honestly, I think the one thing that we're all missing is really good, clear communication. And that's why I think you can talk to your girlfriends in a certain way. If you're a woman, and guys have their communication with the guys, but there's something that men are from Mars, women are from Venus, that book that was out years ago. I think that just that concept, we miss each other. We might even be wanting the same thing, but the language we use is not identical. And so there's miscommunications and hurt feelings, and that just causes problems that don't really necessarily have to be caused. So,
there are ways to figure that out.
Yeah, take a class. It's a good time to go back to your community college, take a class. I had a friend who always liked Sauvignon Blanc wine, and she took a wine class and at our community college here, and learned. Suddenly she was the expert and was having wine tastings at her house. And the funny thing was, you really couldn't tell the difference between the very expensive bottles of wine and the stuff that she was picking up at the grocery outlet. We'd have a blind taste test. And it was really fun. And she was sharing some of the knowledge that she had when she went to school. So it's keeping going, just being active. And, our book encourages women to have a plan. And each chapter there's 8 chapters, and each one covers suggestions. You take a little assessment at the beginning, and on a scale of 1 to 10, you sort of figure out where you are, and maybe you're happy with a 5. Maybe working on your communication skills with your kids is no longer a priority. You don't want to do that, but maybe you really do. And so then we come up with a bunch of suggestions, a bunch of little vignettes and conversations that we had with people. And then you can say, oh, I'd like to try this, this, and this. And at the end of the chapter, you have a plan. And then at the very end of the book, you go back and look at all your plans and pick something so you're not so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have to do all this. It's like, that's not the goal. It's like, pick something. Take baby steps and move forward a little bit.
Yeah. Good that it's not for overwhelm, but it's great that it's practical, that it's not just here's a bunch of ideas, but that you actually lay out a way to make use of it and give folks a plan.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's part rediscovering yourself and part recreating yourself.
Perfect. Yep, you got it. That's it, exactly.
Oh, we've summed it up. Excellent.
Excellent. Is our time up? How are we doing?
So if you were to be speaking with a group of women in the 50 and up, and you were to give one piece of wisdom that from the various interviews and research and your own experience, what would you say?
There's so much that we gained. Yeah, I think a lot of women are very guilty of saying yes when they mean no, and they mean yes. And I think as you get older, you need to rethink some of the answers you've given over the years and perhaps adjust your answer. Especially when it comes to helping. Oh, can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? And we have been conditioned to say, yes, of course I can help. When we're going, oh my God, what did I get into? And the age where our parents, if we still have them, are ill or elderly and needing a lot of assistance, and we feel obligated to jump in, or our kids have a bad breakup, or they lose their job and they move back into the house, setting those boundaries. And I do think that our lives, all of our lives, would be better if we could really tune in and give ourselves a moment, like not answer right away and just say, hey, let me think about it. That's the one. Okay, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Like tomorrow, okay?
Yeah.
You can really digest the request and see if it's all right. If it's going to work for you, you're going to do it with resentment and eye rolling and tone of voice and all those things.
Yeah. In which case, the giving is how we feel that we have to give, but if we give it with a sense of resentment, it's like, maybe that's not the best giving. I read an article recently that said the most powerful word for success is no. And being able to say no to those things and setting those boundaries, because when you say yes, you're saying no to so many other things. And I think that, as you said, it's important, especially at a certain point in life, of saying, okay, it's time for me to put the oxygen mask on my own face first. It's time for me to take care of me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially for women. I think men are okay more than women saying no and setting priorities. And when we're just here to please everybody, and as we get older, we're finally at a point where we can sort of set priorities and say, okay, I've got this much time left and I've already taken care of and raised and done for. So now it doesn't mean you have to be selfish, but we don't have to be selfless.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Don't need your epitaph to say, never turn down an opportunity to sacrifice.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. And then the second one is, you're at a point now where judgment, and this is a big thing I talk about in my writing workshops too. It's judgment. We judge ourselves. We're so harsh about judging ourselves, as we get older. Like men get more distinguished and women don't necessarily look better as they age. We look different. But that doesn't mean that it's just the judgment, the self-judgment, the being so critical and worrying about being judged by other people. And so that's something as I've gotten older, I'm just like, hey, I wear comfortable shoes, you know? My days of high heels have long gone, you know, and if I'm supposed to look a certain way at an event, I'm going to have flats on. I'm sorry. But there's a time when people would have judged, you know, someone wearing comfortable shoes. So I think that's a silly example.
Yeah.
I think we need to let go of what people think of us and start worrying more about what we think of us.
I know that I noticed this in a lot of people who are much older. They get to a certain place where it's like, I don't care anymore. But it's so much later.
Yeah.
And it's like, boy, if we get to that point earlier, it would sure make a difference.
Yeah. Well, it's good not to care about certain things, but you know, you still want to be able to look in the mirror and look presentable and not, I don't know, like my daughter moved out of the house. She used to take care of, like, if I had to look nice for an event or something, I could go to her because she'd gone to fashion. She's into fashion design and hairstyling and all that. And so I said, what am I going to do when you move away? She goes, we're going to talk on Skype, Mom, before you ever go out. But, you know, it's good to have a few things that are your go-to clothes for events or whatever, so that you know, all right, I have to be presentable.
Yeah.
Or get some help if it's your kid's wedding and, you know, you're not known for knowing how to put colors together. Go get some help. You know, there's plenty of help. And I think that's the other thing too. Ask for help if you need it. You know, now men aren't so good at that, like directions. They don't always ask for help. But women, you know, if you have 4 or 5 girlfriends that you're tight with and you don't know how, you can bet they do. You can bet somebody can help you. You just have to say, hey, I need help.
Yeah.
And that's why I think more than anything, we're trying to build a community of women who can support one another and be there for one another when needed, if needed.
Excellent. So yeah, so it's moving past that worrying so much about what, or caring so much about what other people are thinking, and getting more clear about what you care about.
Yeah.
What's important to you, and then coming up with a plan of how do I take care of what I care about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of that is to take a moment and pause and appreciate how far you've come. You know, we're so quick to forget, oh, here's a list of all the things I've done in my life that are just amazing. Like, did you learn how to swim? Do you know how to drive a boat? I mean, can you paint your own house? Do you know how to sew clothes? I mean, can you make a really good pot of stew? I mean, all those things matter. You know, did your kids grow up and get jobs? Are they able to take care of themselves? Are they kind, nice people? I mean, we forget that we've done so many little things to help people along the way. And we just are always on to the next, you know, and that's the other thing in this book. You know, you can take a look and go, oh yeah, I did do that. You know, I have good friends. You know, I have managed my finances to the point where I can take 1 or 2 really groovy trips every year. You know, I am in pretty good shape. I made time to be able to, I can still hike. You know, I can go bicycle through Europe if I still want to. You know, we forget. We're just so busy collecting the next thing.
Yeah.
Not even material possessions, you know, just the next experience, rather than just sit there and go, oh, I've done pretty darn good. You know? And this little area could use some assistance, but I mean, we have 8 areas in the book, and it's like, hey, 7 out of 8 ain't bad. And I think most of us would go through this and go, I've done pretty well. I've got a couple little places where I could tweak them, and it could be better because it'd be better for me.
Yeah. And that opportunity to go through and have that chance to acknowledge what we've done and where we are is a great launching point then to go into, and now what?
And you know what? People can do this right now. You can do it on your phone while you're sitting around, but just start writing down all the things you've done in your life. Just start making that list. It's impressive. even if you think you've done nothing, and start as a little kid, like, oh, in 5th grade, I was the best colorer in my class. That says something about you. I used to be really good at swimming. Keep looking at that list, because in that list is really your essence.
Yeah.
And all the things, and back and remember what a wonderful human being you are.
Yeah. Too often we minimize our successes and dismiss them, and to take that opportunity to acknowledge it. That is powerful.
Yeah.
So that's one of the many tools that folks will find in Don't Stop Now. So and folks can get that where?
On Amazon. Don't Stop Now, Making the Most of the Rest of Your Life. It's there.
Excellent. And I'll actually have a link here below the video so that folks can go right there and get that.
Good.
And well, thank you, Jan, for your time. Thank you very much for writing this book.
Thank you for interviewing me. This is great. I'm so glad I met your wife, and she introduced me to you. It worked out great. So thanks, Brad.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.